I'm going to pray real quick. Um, God, thank you so much for sending your son not to judge, but to save. And my mind has never been changed through, at least in an eternal way, unless you've intervened. And so, God, I pray that you would use me, speak through me, that anything that is meaningful and eternal, that, yeah, you would show up. I can't speak without you. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for each of these churches and the differences and how you made them. Let us be able to celebrate our differences, leverage our differences and our strengths and our weaknesses. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me adjust real quick. So, like he said, I love questions in between. Personally, I just wish church had more dialogue. It doesn't throw me off. I say it throws me on. So, like, if you have a comment, question, concern, if you think I'm speaking heresy, like, raise your hand, just share it. Honestly, like, it makes it better for me because then I'm, like, having a real discussion. So, what's up, family? My name's Grant Skeldon. I know you all like, who? Yeah, it's just a random dude. So I want to share a little bit about my story. I'm a little racially ambiguous, so I'll help with that. You can go to the first slide. Oh, I can control it. Nice. Okay, that's me. I'm half Mexican, i.e. soccer. So tried to played on this team with girls. There was like 3 girls that were better than all. They were like starting way better. I'm not good at soccer. I'm not good at being Mexican. I'm a Mexicant. I really am. Like, the only thing I know how to say in Spanish is anyone here know how to speak Spanish? Okay. The black dude, you know how to speak Spanish? Nice. They put me to shame. All right. You're from Arizona? Dang, all right. I'm from Texas. It's like Mexico's right there. I've never even been to Mexico. Anyway, okay, so this is what I know how to say. I know how to say, Yo soy mexicano, pero mi madre no enseñó español. Which means basically, yo, my mom is Mexican, but she never taught me Spanish. And I needed to learn how to say that to the cooks at Papados when I worked there, right before I started this, because they kept coming up like, oh, no, no, and I'm like, yo, and I don't know, and they always say, oh, mijo, muy malo, and I'm like, sí. Like, I knew what they were saying right there. And so, mom's Mexican. She's the youngest of 14 kids. That's how they do it. It's like an army on this side of the family. It's huge. And then my dad, though, he's actually South African. So I tell people I'm Mexican, African American, which is technically true. My dad just was a white dude from Africa. This is my best friend from middle school to high school. Still hang out with him to this day. Started playing basketball. I say this because your culture really does dictate the kind of food you eat, the music you dance to, listen to, like the hobbies you have. Like Mexicans, my Mexican side of the family, they don't play golf. Like, that's just not what they do. And white people don't do quinceañeras. Like, when I go to a white wedding, when it comes to the music part, I don't get excited. I'm like, all right, let's do the cha-cha slide and slide to your left, and like, let's do all the songs that literally tell you what to do and when to do it. But when I go to a black wedding, I'm like, this is gonna be legit. Like, this is gonna be awesome. And they might do one of those songs, but it's gonna be like Soulja Boy first song, like you, and then like it's just a difference. And the food is gonna be different at a Mexican wedding than like. It really does dictate, not like it's good, it's all these differences are awesome, but I grew up trying to figure out, so what is a Mexican South African supposed to do? Like, and I'm pioneering the way. This is how they dress, because I've never met another one. This is how they talk. I am the epitome, because if you know one, let me know. But I went to school, racially diverse school, mostly minorities, lower income. Eric Dansby, played basketball, changed my laces every day to match my shirt, as you can see. Then went to high school, still played basketball. And I say this to say, basically I had 2 gods at that time, 2 things that I put on the throne of my heart. And that was a relationship I had with a girl of 3 years. I'm 16 years old at this age. I was dating the captain of the hip hop team. I was the basketball guy. It was like the making of a ghetto high school musical. And then this girl just breaks my heart, and she comes up to me, tears in her eyes, like, I gotta tell you something, we gotta talk, but I gotta tell you later. Oh, heck no, like, you gotta tell me right now, what is it? And so she tells me, and tears in her eyes, like, I've been sleeping with this other guy while you've been I was at a basketball tournament. And you guys have, if you have high school kids or no high school students, that's like their world. Especially 3-year relationship. Everyone saw us as like the couple, and then this girl betrays me. I was very, as you can see, like we're not the happiest of groups. Like I was very trying to be hardcore. Just like you couldn't be soft where I grew up. Like you get stepped on, you'd be a pushover. Like you wouldn't make it. And so this really crushed me inside. And I was always thinking though, and that really made me process some things. That was Monday. On Thursday, I got into it with my coach and a teammate, and I got kicked off the basketball team. And so that was the worst week of a 16-year-old's life. Like my identity, everything I put on the throne of my heart was, I realized how temporary it was, and I realized how much my world could crumble because of it. And so to fast forward, I'd love to share more of like how the gospel changed my life. But I got invited to church about a month later. It was Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas, Ed Young. And first time, March 8, 2006, I walk in. One, I was invited. They like loved me right from the front door. One of the guys just connected with me. This Hispanic dude, older guy. Well, he's probably my age now. At that time, this is 10 years ago. And he just made me feel welcome, and just like he hugged me as if he knew me for a long time. And for me, I'd never been to church where I didn't feel like I stood out. Like I dressed different. I just didn't grow up in a private school, homeschool. And that's what a lot of the kids at church were like when I went to church. I didn't dress up for church. It's just not how I grew up. And so it was the first time I ever felt like I somewhat belonged when I went to church. And I know y'all know this, but I always want to remind people, I personally believe worse than being all alone on a Friday night is being like all alone in a room full of people that are all happy and Christians, and they're supposed to love you and be a ministry of reconciliation, but they don't like connect with you. That sucks. Like to see people not alone while you're alone, that's worse. I'd rather be by myself watching Netflix than that. And so that was the first time that didn't happen when I went to church. And I sat in the back like I always did, heard the gospel, heard a testimony of a guy that got the state championship in football and then felt like it was empty. Kind of like Tom Brady, if you ever heard him say, like, there's got to be something more. And realizing this guy got what I kind of wanted and felt like it was empty. I didn't get what I wanted, and I feel like it was empty. There's got to be something else. And I realized I want to put my life in something that's more eternal and will matter in 10,000 years, and not when one day I can lose it and my whole life is in shambles. And so I give my life to Christ, and it was a song by Switchfoot. I never heard a Christian song I liked until this song. And it was, "This is your life. Is this who you want to be? Is this everything you ever hoped for and imagined?" And I was asking myself that question, like, this is your life. Is it who you want to be? This is your life. Is it who you want to be? And I realized I want to give my life to Christ. Funny story I've never shared before. The only other time I've been to Orlando was a guy who discipled me named Sujo John. He's got an I Am Second story, survived the 81st floor of the Twin Tower when it got hit. And when he asked me if he could disciple me, he brought me to Orlando to rock the universe. And he was speaking at that, and right after him was Switchfoot. This was like 3 years after I got saved. So I'm like a little girl, like, oh my God, I got saved to this guy's song, like, and he's like, you got to go talk to him. Like, no, like, I am not going to talk to him about anything. And basically, right after he got off the stage, he pulled John Foreman aside. He was talking to him, and I didn't know what he was doing. And he pointed at me, and he's like, "Hey, go talk to him." And I like just wasn't ready to talk to him, and I was like, "Man, your song changed my life." And he's like, "Awesome, man," and he just kept walking. And I barely could tell him. I knew he was trying to be nice, but I wasn't even speaking English. Anyway. That was the biggest day of my life, giving my life to Christ, March 8, 2006. But the second biggest day of my life was actually 2 weeks later, when there was a man who called me, that man who hugged me when I walked in the door, and he said, "Man, I saw that you gave your life to Christ on one of the cards, and I also saw what neighborhood you're from, and the school you go to. It's going to be really hard to be a Christian in your school, because every time we try to go reach your school, it's just not a lot of return on the income. Like there's just not a lot of believers there." He said, "We have 600 high school students in our ministry right now, and hundreds come from past your school, but every time we try to reach your school, it's just there's no connection there. And so I'm assuming it's going to be really difficult, and I'd love to." And he said these two phrases: "I want to take you under my wing, and I want to disciple you." And I'll just say, y'all, like, if March 8, 2006 was the biggest day of my life, I think 2 weeks later was the second biggest day of my life. Because the grand majority of young adults I know, and I would say the grand majority of you guys, how many of y'all got saved before you were 18 years old? How many of you guys got immediately discipled to learn the ways of the Lord right after? It's a lot less. Or I would even say if you're in ministry, it probably is because you got discipled. Like you got empowered to do things that were above, like you were punching outside your weight class. You were doing things you just couldn't do, but someone believed in you enough and empowered you enough to let you fail enough. And then you finally realize, like, they believe in me more than I believe in myself, or they'll let me fail forward until I can do it. And I just don't know a lot of young adults that have that right now. I think a lot of young adults have been coddled by their parents, and now they're being criticized by their bosses, but no one, if they're either being coddled or they're being criticized, and I don't think anyone's coaching them. And what coaching is to me is, I'm on your team, but I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm on your team, going to call you to higher things. I'm going to challenge you, and that's my job. And I'm on your team, but I'm not actually, I can't do it. Like, I have got to constantly allow you to fail forward, but I'm with you. Like, it's that truth and grace. While I feel like there's grace from the parents, there's truth from the bosses, but it's either or. It's not both and. And I think coaching and or discipleship is what a lot of millennials need. And I'll tell you this also is that I dare you to ask the top 3 millennials you know that are unbelievably mature compared to other millennials in all the stereotypes, which are mostly true, but ask them who mentored you, believed in you, discipled you, empowered you that's older than you. Because in my experience, I've never met one single 20-something with a nationally impactful business, ministry, anything, church, that doesn't have someone older at a young age that started to invest in them. Never. Like, every time they laugh. They're like, how do you know? I'm like, dude, no way you're this wise and this connected and this much fun. So young people aren't known for wisdom in the Bible, ever. Like, it's never connect to young people. Funding is not what connecting to young people. Like, connections, young people. It came from someone older, wiser, that gambled on you every single time. And so for me, what I love is, I'll be honest, like, this whole millennial thing is not even really that much my passion. My passion is discipleship. Luckily, that's exactly what I think millennials need. And so if I come and say discipleship, people are like, oh, people, unfortunately, I believe, view discipleship as a luxury to their church. Like, man, that would be cool if one day we could start making disciples and have a discipleship plan. But if I say this is how you reach millennials, discipleship, all of a sudden pastor's like, oh my God, we got to do this. Which is crazy to me that I've got to somehow use a Trojan horse to get the church to want to do what the Great Commission says. And yes, the question, what's up, man? Yeah, no, good at it. That's good. That's good. I'll go in. Let me go into it right now. Quick little transition. So I went from this to getting saved at a church that looked like this, and so a lot of white people, basically. Like, I started going, these 3 places I'd never been for until I hung out with white Christians. Starbucks, Chipotle, and Chick-fil-A. Never been there at all until it's like the second Christian trinity of, like, the church that everyone worships at regularly. To this day, believe it or not, I'm a millennial that has never tasted coffee in my life. I've got to keep one thing that I don't do. I know, and the biggest idol of the church is coffee, acceptable idol, but I think for me, discipleship is these 4 places of inclusion. Again, this is a way, it's not the way. I think discipleship historically has been so curriculum-based. Every time I get asked, like, what's the curriculum look like? And I think it needs curriculum. And I'll even say every generation tends to, like, respond in a strong pendulum the other direction. So mine is heavy relational, and I could see the next generation being like, yo, we need more of the Bible. So know that mine's heavy relational. That I think joining someone's work life, church life, family life, or personal life. When I ask someone to disciple me, I ask them, can I join one of these 4 sectors? There's a couple reasons why. Number one reason why is because most leaders are really busy. It's just the nature of someone that I want to disciple me is going to be busy. They don't have time. Hey, Eric, could you help me know my time? Or maybe just give me like a 20-minute, like a 2, a 10, a 5, and a 1. Okay, thank you. Even a clock or something. And so, they don't have time. Because we view discipleship, I would say, as mentorship. What the church usually views discipleship. Like, mentorship to me is if Jesus went to Peter and said, hey, come and meet with me. Not come and follow me. He said, hey, come and follow me. And if Peter was like, okay, and he's like, whoa, slow down. Like, get your calendar out. We're going to do once a week meetings for 3 years at Luby's or Starbucks or whatever. And then you're going to be ready to do all that I need you to do, which is not true. We know that. Like, how much would it change things if Jesus mentored the 12 instead of discipled them? Just met with them once a week, which, by the way, most people aren't even doing that, let alone discipleship. But that's just, it's a low bar. And people aren't even meeting that bar. But the beauty of mentorship to discipleship, if mentorship is come and meet with me, to me, discipleship is come and follow me. Following requires no change in your life. It requires the young person to change their life. In the sense that, I'll share a story and I'll show you kind of what it could look like. This dude right here, this is Raymond Harris. He is the architect for this small company, startup called Walmart. And basically, dude's got the third largest architect firm in the nation. It's not creative design much, like it's a box, but it's a big box and it's everywhere. Thank you. So there's a lot of them. So I knew getting this guy, like he's a big supporter of IJM, Keller's ministry, a lot of different ministries, and he's very, the I Can Only Imagine movie that's coming out, Woodlawn. He's just got his hands in a lot of things. I knew it was going to be hard to get this guy to disciple me. What I love about this dude, he carries himself so humbly. He's the kind of guy that has a lot of influence and no one would ever know it, and I want to know how to have that at a younger age. And so sometimes I feel like you want to get discipled in a competency, which I've spent a lot of time doing that. This is the first guy I was like, I need to start getting discipled in a characteristic, if that makes sense. So character or competency, I needed that. I just felt like I want to learn how to be humble now rather than trying to figure out how to do that when people say you should be humble. And so I asked him to disciple me. Well, I'll just say, I try to get time with them. I think dating and discipleship are very similar in the initial stages, in the sense that you don't just go and meet someone and say, hey, will you marry me? I don't think you should go and ask if they'll disciple me. You go on a couple dates, get around them, join their group a little bit. So I started spending time around his group, which was naturally already happening. And then I asked him while we were in New York at a conference, I said, man, I'd love to run with you. I knew he liked running. I think ideally if you can join their passion, it's even easier. And so I asked, can I run with you in Central Park or something? He's like, oh, absolutely. Didn't work out. And so because of the timing, we had like 6 a.m. breakfast and stuff. And so when we got back to Dallas, I texted him and I said, hey, I still really would love to run with you. And he said, okay, how about tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, just tell me, I can move my schedule to make it happen. And he said 4 o'clock. And I already know these runners, like they love like being disciplined and hardcore. Like we post our stickers on the back. It's the participation trophy of the Xer Boomer generation. It's like, what place did you get? We got 600th place. Like, and we post, I'm like, heck no, I'm not posting a sticker to show, oh, at least I did 12 point whatever miles. Like, it's such a joke that we get made fun of for participation trophies. And these guys, I got a medallion for 600th place. That's hilarious. With that, that's worse. That's worse than getting 10th place trophies. He said 4 o'clock. So I show up at his office downtown, right in the Holocaust Museum, and 4 a.m. And I don't want to wake up at that time, but I want him to know I'll do whatever it takes to get mentored time with you. And I'll move my schedule, like the disciples move their schedule and their location. And honestly, I would love to say that was one of the best days of discipleship in my life. But the reality is the dude didn't even show up, like at all. In fact, around 7 a.m., which I did not wait, I went home around 5. But he texts me, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Grant. I totally meant 4 p.m., not 4 a.m. And I was like, oh man, like you can't come off like all hardcore, like, hey, meet me at 4 tomorrow, and then not classify. Like, I'm just going to assume, who the heck runs at 4 p.m. in downtown Dallas? It's like, I don't know, but that's what he does, I guess. And so I tell that story to say that, like, one, and I tell that a lot to millennials, not to toot my horn, but to say, that dude to this day knows that I'll do whatever it takes to follow him. In fact, when I get back this Sunday, I run with him now around this lake. He runs like 9 miles. And he sprained his ankle 2 weeks ago, and badly. And we're doing this race on Sunday, and this is bad, but I'm going to skip church so I can go and walk with him. He wants to walk it. I said, I'll walk 9 miles, and then I'll run the last part. But I'm like, this dude's like a father figure to me now. And he's walked with or jogged with me like through a lot of things in life. And so it's just, I'm joining his life now. He's allowed me to join his work life. Like I've gone to some of the movie sets with him, and I've gone to IJM stuff with him. And so I found that if you could find an area, then you start going, even his family life, which I think is the most impactful for this generation because of the lack of fathers and or a healthy family. But basically, following someone into their family life, work life, church life, private life, it helps in that people then have that already. So what I say is, I'm not asking you to add me to your calendar. I'm asking you to include me in your calendar. I'm not asking you to change anything about your life. I'm just asking you if you could have someone be a shadow in one of these areas. And 9 times out of 10, that's possible. If they view it as adding one more thing to their calendar, we are too busy. And I've seen this in pastors. I can't tell you how many pastors I've met that don't disciple anyone. And they would say, I'm too busy with doing ministry to disciple someone. Which, to me, I'm like, what the heck is your definition of ministry? That you would say you're doing ministry, but you're not making disciples? Like, it's a legit opposite of what Jesus considered ministry. So it's like, you might be doing ministry successfully in the eyes of this nation, in this church, but like, Jesus didn't do what you're talking about, like, at the expense of making disciples. Do y'all get what I'm saying? Like, just to think of it this way, think about if Jesus did all the ministry we think he did, but he didn't have the 12. Like, he walks on water, he feeds 5,000, he heals people, he raises Lazarus from the grave. He does all of it. Everything we know in the gospel, the one change is he just didn't have 12 guys to follow him for 3 years, to watch that and see that. How much does that change us sitting here today? So when he leaves, and really the grace is ours, as he raises from the grave and exchanges his righteousness for our sinfulness, there's just no one really there to kind of tell us about it. And I just don't understand how we've gotten to a point where we consider anything but discipleship ministry. And I personally think it's why there's an idea that I'm going to come up and like share these tips and tricks on how to reach millennials. I think, let me show you how to reach millennials or every generation for the rest of your life. Like, discipleship, it will always work. As Billy Graham says, the methods change, but the message doesn't. Disciple the next person who disciples the next person. Like, I already am starting to feel like an older person. Like, back in my day, we couldn't have cell phones in high school. Like, or back in my day, we had to cover our tattoos on the basketball team. And like, these kids got gauges and all that. Or back in my day, like, we actually had to like go to the wall to get the phone. Like, we had like these. They're starting to happen. Or they're naming like musicians. Like, who's Lil Uzi and like Lil Yachty and these so many little like these names that I'm starting to feel like, dang, this is what my parents started sounding like. Like, that's happening to me now. And so I want to find, and I've got my whole team, like, it's a requirement. You're not working for me unless you're discipling. Like, you need to disciple someone, you need to be discipled by someone, because no one's going to follow this whole message if we ain't doing it. Like, how the heck would we expect the congregation to just take this upon themselves? And how do we ever read the Bible as if it's not a main part of all the Gospels, like from Jesus to Paul? And so, again, I love millennials, but I also just love discipleship in the sense that I was changed by it, and everyone I've known that is unbelievably different than the stereotype that is a 20-something was changed by it. So how many stories of discipleship do we need to see until we say, this might be a worthy strategy, and there might be a reason why the God of the universe came back to say, as his final last words, which I think if it's his last words, it should probably be our first priority, go and make disciples. And so going to metrics, I wanted to show something. Here's one of the things that I think is the problem. Is that there's 4 calls to action in the Great Commission. My campaign is make the commission great again. Go make disciples, baptize. And honestly, like, isn't it crazy that there's this generation, like the most cause-oriented generation in the world is not connecting with the most cause-oriented organization in the world? Like, I don't even understand how that's possible. We all say, like, the church is the hope of the world. How in the world would the young adults not connect with that when they are just desperately dying to be a part of something bigger than themselves? What is bigger and more important and has a better message and a better impact on the world than the church? How can it, and how is it not connecting? I personally really do believe it's because we have settled for a decent commission. Like, we're not making the commission greater. It was like, I don't want a decent commission. You give me a great commission, something that's so big I can't do it by myself, so big I have to work with other churches, so big that, like, I need the differences of that church that does it this way and this church that does it that way. That's a mission that I think millennials would really connect with in this time. But if you're saying the biggest win right now is just how many people show up on Sunday, that does not excite me at night. Like, that doesn't, not the people in the pews. I personally think that we're tired of that and have to manufacture energy to every week basically do what I think, man, I'm sorry, y'all, I love the church, but I only have 30 minutes, so I gotta be real with y'all. Like, but if your service every Sunday sounds like this, because I see it a lot, oh man, I just can't do this. All right, end of Sunday message. Guys, we are so excited for next week, because next week we start our new series, and we're going to have this pastor, and he's going to come and he's going to rock the house, and you got to come and be here next week. Be a bringer, bring everybody you know. So next week comes, it's got to be the most awesome thing ever. And so it is. Then what do you think happens at the end of that message? Guys, next week is going to be the best. You can't miss it. You cannot miss it, because next week is going to be the best. I know we said last week, but next week is actually the best, that you cannot miss it, because this guy's now coming, and we're doing this series. And guess what happens after we made it that one? Guys, next week is going to be the best. This guy, you cannot miss it. I know we said you can't miss that one and you can't miss that one. And if you've been here for 5 years, you can't miss any week, really, because if you miss it, you are going to miss it. And if you miss it, basically, like, every time we can't miss it, surely some of y'all are like, there's got to be more than that. Surely, like, and some of y'all know that you manufacture energy that you aren't even as excited about it, because I feel like there is a missing piece, or a missing metric, I would say, in the Great Commission that we're just, like, not paying attention to. And go make disciples, baptize, teach. These are the 4 calls to action. I think we're crushing it on 3. I think for every church I know, we have a mission pastor usually on staff. We have local partners. We have foreign partners. We have a plan, a strategy. And I say this too because we're just very strategic with following out that command of going. We even maybe have a volunteer team, a committee, all this funding dedicated to it. Baptize. Does anyone have a class for baptism? Do y'all just let people go do that organically? None of y'all have classes for it? Okay. So y'all, class, we have a weekend. Anyone have a weekend dedicated to baptisms? Okay. We have weekends dedicated to it. We have a pastor dedicated probably to making sure they know what they're doing, teaching them how to do it. Maybe you might have a style of doing, like I know at the Village, you have to read your testimony. There's a lot of strategy around this. Then teaching. Any of you guys do some teaching on Sunday morning? All right. So teaching, I mean, that's what we specialize in this one. Like, you're going to come Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, every single day, there will be a little bit of this right here. So we're very strategic. We don't just show up Sunday and organically say, yo, hey, you feeling it this morning? Like, yo, go ahead. Like, we don't do that. So I say this is like, we're so dang strategic with the metrics and the plan and all that. But I ask the pastors all over the nation, what's your strategy? I'm 19 years old. I'm 25 years old. I'm 38 years old, just got saved. Or I've never been discipled. I come to you, pastor, and I want to get discipled. What's the strategy? Or I put 10 of your members in a church, the elders, the senior pastor, the mission pastor, some of the youth pastors. I put them all in different rooms, and I ask them, yo, what's the strategy for discipleship at this church? Will they even say the same thing? Like, will they even have the same plan? Has it been communicated to them how we make disciples at this church? Or are we just hoping, because a lot of times this is what the answer is. Somewhere along the way, when I ask, what is the strategy for making disciples? They'll say, oh, man, yeah, so 1, small groups. I hate small groups, personally. 2, and I'll get into that. I know that's heresy. 2, and then we want it to happen organically through small groups. It's like, man, that's crazy. Organically through small groups. That's cool, except that Jesus didn't do that. In the sense that, why would we do this so strategically, this so strategically, this so strategically, and Jesus did this crazy strategically, and you're telling me we're just going to cross our fingers, and what I think is Spanish for having no plan is called organic in the church. We're just going to do nothing and hope that this happens? How is that working for any of us right now? And man, please, I want to be corrected on this if it's wrong, but like, I'm not meeting the churches that are organically approaching discipleship and seeing mass numbers of discipleship. So if it's working, tell me, because I am driven by this, because if we don't disciple this generation, this Z generation is so terrible in the sense that my generation is just a byproduct of a neglected discipleship. You see immaturity, you can't expect what you don't invest. Like, it's a reap what you sow. Like, I'm not saying, hey, it's all your fault. Your generation wasn't discipled. Like, somewhere along the way, we started caring a lot more about discipleship than, I don't know, all these other things that are great in complementing discipleship, even small groups. I think circles are better than rows. And I think discipleship is way better than circles. Like, yeah, do circles right after you do discipleship. Jesus didn't get 12 guys and say, hey, come and follow me. He went strategically, one, this, you. And you know what that formed? This formed a small group. So I think, yes, let's do small groups through discipleship, not discipleship through small groups, because it's not happening, in my opinion. If it is, tell me. But I just haven't seen that church come up and say, hey, we're seeing mass amounts of discipleship relationships form through organically approaching small groups. And I think it can a little bit. I see it sometimes happening. But I hate that it's kind of happening and people don't even know it's happening. I can't tell you how many times I preach this to congregations and they're like, actually, this is kind of happening. It's like they're surprised they're discipling because they have no plan or communication on it. Why are people so... Y'all get what I'm saying right now? Like, this is problematic, and we can't neglect it anymore. Like, I'm not saying millennials are the first generation to not be discipled. I'm saying millennials are the first generation that I think every generation that we don't disciple is being discipled by the culture. This is just, the culture has shifted so drastically for this generation that we can finally see how much that impacts us. Because you used to culturally supposed to go to church and socially be somewhat of a good Christian, even if you didn't actually live that way. Now, if you live somewhat like Christ, you are at odds with culture. And so young adults people are doing what they've always been doing. It's just now culture is that much at opposition with the church. And this generation's so not prepared for what's coming. Because I don't see things getting easier. I think it's getting a lot harder with the least prepared generation. And again, I think in a lot of ways we've missed millennials because a lot of them are older now. But for the love of the Lord, like literally, let's reach this generation so that my generation is ready to disciple Z generation. Because, yeah, they grew up with the phone when they were like 3. I got a phone when I was like 7th grade. It's just it's going to be a different world. Questions, comments, concerns? Heresy. That's good, man. Thank you. All right, let's look at a couple stories. Like, this is my man, Adam Wright. He's president of Dallas Baptist University. I want to share... Let's share this story. This dude, a friend of mine, Connor, in our program, asked, hey, can I get discipled by you? Adam's a great guy. I connected him to Adam and thought, man, you guys would be really good together. You guys got like a similar vibe. Anyway, Adam's like, hey, I'd love to disciple you, but let's do it next semester. I'm already discipling 3 guys right now. So cool. What he meant, though, is he explained what that meant, is once a week for 30 minutes each, he meets with all 3 of these guys. 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, once a week, like on a Wednesday or something. And so that was great. Connor's like smiled. He said, hey, that's awesome. Actually, though, I don't want to do that. I want to get discipled. And what I mean by that is I want to follow you. So, okay, explain. We have like a one sheet. And he shows them family life, work life, church life, personal life. He's like, okay, so you want to go with me. And so he actually said, well, can you go with me to the meeting I'm doing right after this? I'm going to meet with this guy named Jim Dennison, has 100,000 bloggers, listeners or readers. And we're planning a trip to Israel, and we're going to look at the leadership facets of Christ. 2-hour meeting. If you can go, if you can drive me, that'd be awesome. Then I can do some emails on the way. He's like, absolutely. And these guys are like 2 prominent leaders, just to hear them speak about leadership. And for them, that might just be another meeting. But for a young adult that's 19 years old, that's like, wow, I'm going with my president and this guy who's like used to be the pastor of one of the biggest churches in the city and now has all these readers. And I'm getting to hear them talk about the leadership facets of Christ and how they want to teach that to students. I guarantee that he's going to pick up certain things. And this is what discipleship is. If it's caught more than it's taught, he's going to see certain things and he's going to do what I did with Kevin Batista, the guy who discipled me. When I saw him with his family, I was like, man, how do I become a father like this guy? Because my dad's not a Christian. How do I become a husband like this guy? because my dad's not the most creative, romantic kind of husband. Like, whatever I need to do to be that man, I was 16 years old and I started planning on how to be that, and I'm still single, like, and I'm still thinking, though, how do I prepare for that at 16? I think a lot of young adults, they may be punks in y'all's mind, and they are punks, but they're isolated punks. Like, they don't think about, well, when my parents were alive, they did this. They just look to the left and look to the right, and they think, yeah, people get onto us because we're not getting married that quickly, or we're switching jobs so much, or we don't stay committed, we don't do all that. But all my friends do that too. Like, everyone over here does it. Everyone over here does that. Discipleship disrupts division. Like, it makes you realize, hey, if I want to be like that, I can't keep living like I'm living today. Young adults that just do community by themselves are like Lord of the Flies. It doesn't work out. Like, Piggy dies. It's like 7th graders asking other 7th graders for dating advice. That's not going to work. Like, you just started liking the opposite sex. You need to ask someone with like a 10-year marriage. Like, that is what's happening when we just let millennials stay by themselves. And so, again, you can't expect what you don't invest. For Adam, he got to follow him. The cool story, and then I'm going to go into all Q&A, right, so one day, Connor texted me this text. Basically what happened was Connor said, hey, Adam, how do you do 14 meetings a day like you do? How in the world do you do that and keep your heart and then go home to your wife and like love them and your kids and love them? And Adam's like, well, your whole thing is following me. Do you want to stay the night tonight and wake up in the morning and see what it looks like? Because he says it's all about how you start your day. It's all about the source in which you start your day. And so he's like, sure, yeah, let's go. And so he stays the night, gets to do dinner with the family, huge for millennials. I can't tell you how many times. The things that you think are, it's not even the most spiritual things. It's basic stuff like that really impacts millennials. Wakes up early at like 5 in the morning. He reads the Bible, he prays, he goes on a jog or a walk, comes back, makes some breakfast for the kids or like cereal stuff, easy stuff. And then he drives to the office, listen to music, stuff like that. And so he does that, wakes up 5, goes in, has a little prayer closet, reads, goes on a jog. So Connor texts me, 19-year-old kid, texts me at like 7 a.m. Because we all know what it's like when you wake up at 6, you've done so much, and it's like 9 a.m., everyone's waking up, and you feel like you've accomplished so much. Millennials don't know what that feels like. And so he's getting that experience, and he texts me, and he says, Grant, get ready to feast your eyes on a new man. He said, I'm about to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day. And I don't know if he really did. Like, I know he did for a while. I don't know if he does today. He's married. He's a very accomplished kid now, and I'd say because he's been discipled by some great guys now. But I know that a lot of young people know that old people wake up early and do those things. We hear like, oh, but it's never convinced a young person to do it. But you see it, and you're like, man, I want to do this. Like, you just can't get that through mentorship at Starbucks. And so if mentorship is come and meet with me, discipleship is come and follow me, and I just hope that what I feel like the church is less than that. If mentorship is come and meet with me, discipleship is come and follow with me. I feel like a lot of churches are just saying, come and listen to me. That's like all. And so again, that is somewhat impactful. It's just, I think this generation, in what persecution is coming and what difficulty is coming, needs way more than just every single event is in this building, and this is where discipleship happens, even though 40 of Jesus' miracles, only 2 of them were in the temple. But we're just going to do all discipleship here. I just don't think that's going to work.
Question for you. In your opinion, is mentoring and discipleship relationship more effective when it's based on partnering people with a lot of experience, or is it partnering with somebody with more relatability?
Oh, that's hard. If you're having relatability and buy-in on both ends. And by the way, I think it is dependent on the young person's hunger more than it's dependent on the seasoned leader's availability. Because like Jesus, a great example was the rich young ruler. We're all in ministry. We know like you got the biggest message in the world and you got a rich, up-and-coming, entrepreneurial, like dude with influence. most of us, we beg, like we do whatever random thing they ask us to do in order to get funding. I know I'm a nonprofit leader. I see some ridiculous things like, hey, we can have $5,000, $10,000, $100,000. You just got to plant these trees on campus. DBU did that. I'm just saying, I know they did that. Jesus doesn't beg this dude. He says, hey, come and follow me. One of the few guys that Jesus said, you can be one of my disciples, could have been the 13th disciple, but he wouldn't move his life around in order to follow him. James and John, my favorite story of moving their life around, they're in a boat, and Jesus sees them, hey, come and follow me. They're with their dad and a servant, and this says they get out of the boat and follow him. I like to think they swam. That'd be so cool if they like just, hey, Dad, no, don't worry, like we'll just swim out and go follow this dude. I like to think that the father went home and was like, honey, I'm home. And the wife's like, yo, where are the kids? Well, they went to be with Jesus. What the heck do you mean? They went to be with Jesus, like gasped, and he's like, oh, no, they're like the good kind. Like they literally went to go follow Christ. And I just think to myself, like they literally left everything they knew to follow Christ, and all the disciples did. And so I think relatability, chemistry, let me put this up here real quick. These are the things I say to look for. We all have kind of heard the faithful, available, teachable. I did add chemistry and hunger just because this generation, my biggest problem with them, is we're not hungry. I will say we've been given so much that it's hard to be hungry when you've been fed so much. I think we need to be harder on this generation, truth and grace. I think parents, especially moms, have made it really hard on this easy on this generation, which is going to make them harder in life. I don't think we need to criticize them for that. I just think we need to challenge them. A lot of times I tell parents, you got to stop saving your kids from the Savior. My most spiritual, intimate times with the Lord were in the hardest times of my life. And every time we step in and save them from that, we're saving them from Jesus, in my opinion. You walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you don't fear evil because God is with you. Not like, I joke, like how many young adults can think, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but I fear no evil because mom's with me. Her wallet and her help always comfort me. Not her rod and the staff of Christ. Like, they don't meet Jesus if you always save them from the Savior. So they're not hungry, and then second is chemistry. Like, I've joined small groups, and within 5 minutes, I know, nope, this ain't gonna be the group. Like, and I've gone on dates before, and like, nope, this ain't gonna be the girl. Like, we know there is got to be some type of chemistry. What I'm not saying is they got to look like you, act like you. The guys that disciple me have never been like me if you look on paper, but they've got this angst that I've got, and I connect with. Like, I just need to see that you're real, like you have a real relationship with the Lord, and you're willing to do the hard things. I can follow a guy like that.
Grant, thank you. Some very good reflection there. Very good things to think about. Thank you.